So there was another article. This one is from The Hill. It's talking about how, and kind of in relation to this kind of whole Democrats attacking each other and stuff. So it's an article about how the primary race is going to get nasty, and it's going to become a ballroom brawl or whatever it is. So, and it says, the article says the gloves are beginning to come off in the crowded Democratic race for the White House that so far has resembled more of a tea party than a ballroom brawl. Okay. Yeah, so it hasn't become a ballroom brawl yet, but it could. It says Mayor Pete Buttigieg said this week he didn't think Bernie Sanders could rebuild the coalition that pushed Bernie Sanders' 2016 candidacy forward, a line many saw as a shot undercutting a rival campaign. Yeah, so Buttigieg is a moron. He claimed to be a supporter of Bernie in 2016. All of a sudden, he feels like he's not going to be able to push to use that momentum into 2020. That makes no goddamn sense. Buttigieg is using zero evidence to make that claim. I have no idea what he's talking about, but that's not surprising from somebody that basically is trying to make his best Beto O'Rourke impression. And it says those remarks came after Sanders' campaign. Ro Khanna lashed out at Buttigieg for comparing Bernie Sanders' supporters to Donald Trump's. Even though Buttigieg had been praising Sanders for reaching out to the anti-establishment voters that Democrats have been accused of ignoring. Yeah, so I don't know. Buttigieg he's trying to play both sides here. One second he's saying Bernie Sanders supporters are like Trump. One second he's saying they're, you need to stand up against the establishment. All right, make up your mind, bro. Either you're on one side or the other. But I mean, that's just typical opportunism for a kind of somebody that wants to be friendly with the establishment, but obviously wants to pretend like he's going up against the establishment, but being friendly with them essentially. It says separately, the Sanders campaign swiped at former Vice President Joe Biden, who entered the race early on Thursday for raising money at the home of a corporate lobbyist, which was the story I mentioned earlier. It says, and Justice Democrats, a group launched by former Sanders campaign aides, issued a blistering statement attacking Biden as a corporate shill and saying he's the wrong kind of politician for the party to nominate. And that's correct. The new attacks come as the race for the party's nomination takes shape around Biden and Sanders, who are the clear front runners at this early stage. Both are now coming under attack. Who's attacking Bernie? I guess that'll be mentioned later the part of this article. Once Democratic Justice says it's going to be nasty. It says how Trump attacked the Republicans back in 2015 and 16. So that's going to be similar to this one. Yeah, I guess it could, because it is a crowded field and everybody's it's going to be like more like a kind of a singular firing squad, but that's how it is. That's a primary for you. What are you going to do? Let's see. It says there are worries about Democrats, however, that as things get uglier, it could hurt the party. Primary race is good for the party. We're seeing real innovative ideas. Blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure not to tear each other apart. Yeah, whatever. Mainstream Democrats on Thursday were seething over the Justice Democrat statement issued hours after Biden's announcement. Alexandra Rojas, a former field organizer for Sanders who now runs the liberal group, called Biden the old guard of the Democratic Party, who she said was responsible for failing to stop President Trump. She says Joe Biden stands in near complete opposition to where the center of energy is in the Democratic Party today. This part I found funny. One Democratic strategist said, "The Justice Democrats make me sick." That just means that the Justice Democrats is a thorn in the side of the establishment. They're a thorn in the side of the Democrats, and they can't stand that. They can't stand that, God forbid, somebody comes out and speaks against, your precious Democratic Party and your precious Democratic Party candidates, and the I guess in this case the kind of the standard bearers, as as the last segment I mentioned, somebody referred to Biden as. It says, I think they said this campaign. This campaign is not about telling people who to vote against. It's about outlining the ideas and policies people can vote for and letting the voters decide for themselves. Yeah, but that's the point. When you're going after somebody like Biden, or you're going after any candidate, you're outlining the idea, or at least you're pointing out the candidate that is not in favor of those ideas and policies that people will vote for that are good for the country. And why? I mean, yeah, you should let voters decide, but at the same time, you have to make sure that voters are getting the facts and they're getting information, and they know that they're going for the candidates that are ultimately going to help those people instead of, backing somebody that's going to screw them over. It says some Democrats say Sanders has a responsibility to keep his online supporters from throwing fire. I can't stand that. They view some of his backers as ruthless attack dogs that will do Sanders' fighting for him. It's this guy, John Renish, is a Democratic strategist. I'm sure he's a fucking genius, as all those idiot strategists are. He says it's up to Bernie to rein in his surrogates. He didn't do that in 2016, and it was to the great detriment of the party. I'm confident that even if he doesn't win the nomination, he'll move to unify the party. The question is whether his trusted message carriers will. See, this is ridiculous, man. What the hell are you fucking talking about? Why would Bernie Sanders do that? Rein in his surrogates. So what is Bernie Sanders supposed to do? He's supposed to tell his supporters that you can't say who you support or who you don't support. You can't criticize any other candidates because it's going to hurt the party. How about the fact that those candidates that the Bernie supporters don't want to support? How about the fact that those candidates are horrible? How about that? Did you ever think about that? Did you ever consider that their policies suck? Not to say Donald Trump's policies and the Republican Party's policies don't suck, but that doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders is responsible for telling us, people like me, people that I know on Twitter, people that I know on social media, people that are his supporters, whether they're organizers for him, whether they're attack dogs on Twitter, Bernie bros, whatever the fuck label you want to use, these people are not going to be reined in by anybody. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what Bernie Sanders says. We're not going to get reined in by anybody. And the more you try to rein us in, the more we're going to attack against you. If Bernie Sanders tries to rein us in, we're going to attack him for telling us what to do. We're not going to like what he's telling us. We're not going to like that he's telling us to rein it in if he says that. And I don't think Bernie's going to say that. The most that Bernie Sanders is going to say, just like he said in 2016, I believe, is that he's going to say that, this is the case, let's say if he's not the nominee, obviously, is he's going to say that this is the case that, against Donald Trump, this is why you should vote for whoever the hell the candidates, whoever the nominee is going to be if it's not him. So he's not going to do any more than that, and he shouldn't do any more than that. These people that are worried about these attack dogs on Twitter, and these people that supposedly have a mind of their own, and don't just listen to what Bernie Sanders says, these people are not going to listen. They're not going to listen to anything that you morons want him to do. We're not going to listen to you, whoever, John Renish. We're not going to listen to Bernie Sanders. We do what we want. We step to the beat of our own drum. So don't think you're gonna silence us, and don't think you're gonna tell us what to do. Don't think you're gonna, dictate the way the things that we say. That's just not going to happen. Period. End of story. So I'm fucking fired up about that, because I can't stand when these people think they can dictate what we say and then try and get Bernie to dictate what we're going to say. Bernie's not going to do that, and we're sure as hell not going to listen to anybody that tries to dictate our narrative and what we're going to stand for, what, the policies that we're going to stand for and the things that we're going to say. It says, on the left, there is bitterness over how the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton treated Sanders in 2016, and worries the party will pull out all the stops to defeat progressive this time around. Yeah, it's going to happen, for sure. They're going to try and do that to Bernie, for sure. No doubt about it. And it says it's one reason why. It's one reason Biden's entry in the race is a watershed moment and one many think will preface a more negative campaign. Yeah, well, big surprise because they know he's the front runner, and we know he's the front runner, and we know who we have to fight against. But we're not worried so much about Trump. I'm more worried about Kamala Harris and people like that. Maybe Beto will work. I don't know. I don't think Beto ultimately is going to be able to have enough to pull out any kind of nomination for the party. I think Kamala Harris has a much better chance because she's a woman of color. She's half Jamaican, half Indian descent. She is, I think strictly based on her identity and the fact that the Democratic Party loves identity politics, they're definitely going to try and push her for sure. And especially since they see a woman of color going against Trump, they think, and then they want to get those women of color voters, even though Bernie Sanders has the support of women of color voters, has the support of Black, Latino, Hispanic, whatever, Asian, everybody. He has those supporters. He has the support of women. So that's all bullshit. So the fact that anybody claims that Bernie Sanders doesn't have support of women is bullshit, and they've been saying that ad nauseum, and I can't stand it because it's bullshit. It says, who's this? Chris Chamberlain, he's a chairman of the liberal group Democracy for America. He says, referring to Biden, he's a corporate Democrat through and through. Let's see, it says, so liberals are also warning Democrats that it would be self-defeating to anger the activist base, which is us, because that's where the energy in the party is. That's absolutely true. And this is Robert Reich. He is a former Secretary of Labor to Bill Clinton. He says, both wings of the party know how high the stakes are, but I hope the establishment wing understands how dangerous it would be to attack Bernie Sanders or anybody else who they may feel represents the left wing of the party. That would be really stupid and self-defeating, and anyone who cares about the future of the country should exert every bit of influence to prevent that. See, Robert Reich, I don't follow him on Twitter. I've seen some people retweeting him and stuff. I don't necessarily have a view on him. I'm pretty agnostic on him. I think a lot of the things that he tweets and says, for the most part, is good. He is not that much of a progressive, but I mean, he's not a neoliberal. He obviously worked for a neoliberal politician. He worked for a corporatist candidate, but he's another one of those guys that knows how to walk that fine line. He is not necessarily referring to like neoliberals. He's not referring to corporatist Democrats. He's not saying that, but he also knows that you need to recruit left-wing, whatever, activists, left-wing, people, supporters, so Bernie supporters and stuff. So he's not an idiot. He knows who he needs. He knows who the party needs to, who they need to cater to. And I mean, to some extent, that's smart. But at the same time, I don't know if he's going to be, I don't know if he's going to really truly be saying the things that I agree with. But at least he's not an idiot. He's not going out there and just smearing Bernie Sanders for nothing. There's another part here. It talks about how Bernie Sanders stood up for violent criminals and domestic terrorists like the Boston Marathon bomber to be able to vote. So incarcerated voters being allowed to vote. I think that's not going to help him in the polls. It's not really going to help him. Kyle Kulinski was mentioning that on one of his episodes from Secular Talk. He was mentioning how that probably kind of helped. That kind of probably hurt Bernie in the polls when he mentioned that people in jail should be allowed to vote. But it's a right. It's a right that's afforded to every American, whether you're in jail or not. And as much as people think that, and to some extent, I believe that people who are on jail should not have the same rights that you or me have, or any kind of regular person out there that's living out there in regular society. But at the same time, when there's when you consider voters, like when you consider people that are in jail for stupid, petty drug crimes and petty theft and whatnot, those people should be allowed to vote. Those people didn't really hurt anybody, When it comes to the Boston bomber and all that stuff, that's a little bit of a different story. But as Bernie Sanders mentioned in the town hall where he made this comment, he said that's a slippery slope and it's going to to result in disenfranchising a lot of people, like those petty drugs, so criminals that sell drugs and commit non-violent crimes and stuff like that. So yeah, so don't murder anybody. So I can see both sides of the argument, but at the same time, it's people have the right to vote. If people in this country have the right to vote, if you're an American, you get to vote. That's period. End of story. And so this guy, I think I mentioned him before. His name is John Delaney. He's a lower tier candidate. Yeah, he's running on a self-funding campaign. He chided Bernie Sanders for calling Israel's government racist. Okay, well, Bernie Sanders is a Jew. His family survived the Holocaust. I think Bernie Sanders has every right to refer to Israel as racist, especially when they are literally discriminating and being racist to innocent Palestinians, let alone killing those innocent Palestinians. Not just being racist against them. They're discriminating against them and killing them. Little children a lot of times too. It says here, Buttigieg has been riding a wave of momentum. Blah, blah. Yeah, okay. We'll get to that later on. Oh, maybe not. Whatever. It says, what does it say here? It says, he said something about Bernie. I think the difference is that a lot of interest in him also was that people were refreshed by the novelty of that boldness. I have a hard time seeing the kind of coalition that he needs ultimately coming together. Yeah, that's what he said earlier. To finish off this article here, it says the Sanders campaign finds suggestions, at least the one from Buttigieg, finds suggestions he can't win particularly irksome. In a statement to The Hill, Sanders campaign manager Faz Shakir said Sanders is leading the charge in standing up to powerful corporate interests, taking on the billionaire class, defeating Trump, and creating government that works for all people. Bernie's unwavering commitment to this fight and his unifying progressive agenda has made him the best positioned candidate to defeat Donald Trump in the general election. And that's absolutely true. I completely agree. We'll see where the polls go and everything. As far as between Biden, between Trump, between Bernie, between Kamala Harris, all these different candidates, Buttigieg, Beto. So right now it's very, very early to say. We don't really know what's going to happen from here. But we'll see what happens as far as kind of as far as where we go from here. Who's going to have the momentum riding into the debates? Who's going to have the momentum when the primaries start? The actual voting starts, like the Iowa caucuses and stuff. So we'll see where that goes.